Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 10 days of JavaScript. Here we are in day number 5, and in this lesson, we are going to learn how to make decisions in our code. Let's jump right into an example. So let's imagine that we own an online strawberry store, and we have a rule that an order must contain at least 10 strawberries in order for a user to place that order. Otherwise, it's just not worth our while to ship it. So, if a visitor has added 10 or more strawberries to their cart, so let's say, let strawberry count equal 20. Okay, as long as this variable that we just made up of strawberry count is greater than 10, then maybe we want to output a message onto the web page that says, congratulations. So we can use the web browser's document object, and it contains a method named write. So document.write, and we can include a string of text in these parentheses. So I can just say congrats. And then if I take a look at the preview area of CodePen, there we can see congrats. Okay, but on the other hand, if strawberry count is less than 10, we don't want to say congrats. In that case, we would want to say document.write and say, sorry, we do not ship orders that small. Okay, now down in the preview area, obviously we do not want to show both of these messages. We want to show either one or the other, depending on the value of strawberry count. So the question becomes, how can we make a decision in our code so that our application can handle either situation and act accordingly? Well, the answer is that we can use something called an if statement. So check this out. Right above the congrats line, let's say if, and then a space, and then parentheses. So if, and then inside the parentheses, let's say strawberry count is greater than 9. Right, so that would include 10, and obviously any number greater than 10. And then right after the closing parentheses, let's open up curly brackets. Inside the curly brackets, I like to drop down. Okay, now on this new line in between the curly brackets, let's cut and paste the congrats line. So I'm just going to select this, cut it, paste it right here. Okay, now there's one more step I want to include before I take a break and explain how this code is working. So right after this closing curly bracket right here, let's say else, and then a new curly bracket pair. And in between these curly brackets, let's drop down, and let's cut and paste our sorry message into these curly brackets. So I'm just going to select this, cut and paste it. Okay, so what's going on? Let's review this code in detail. It really almost makes sense in plain English. We're saying if strawberry count is greater than 9, then do this, else or otherwise do this. So now down in the preview area, we only see the congrats message because our strawberry count is clearly greater than 9. But if we change this value up here to something that is not greater than 9, like maybe 5 for example, then down in the preview area, we see the sorry message. And that's cool. It means that our tiny application is now flexible. It automatically adapts and makes decisions on its own. And that's the heart and soul of programming. Computer programming uses if statements or similar conditional logic like this everywhere. For example, on Facebook, if you are someone's friend, then you can see their entire profile and all of their photos. Else or otherwise, if you are not their friend, maybe you just see a very limited version of their profile. Okay, now let's learn more about how if statements work. So for starters, you do not need to include the else area. The else is just a fallback insurance plan, right? If this condition is not true, then the else will happen. But you don't have to have the else, so we could delete the word else and then its curly bracket pair, like this. And now down in the preview area, we see that if this condition is not true, then just literally nothing happens. So the idea here is that the if statement can stand on its own without the else block. Okay, the next thing I want to cover is that this area inside the parentheses is called the condition. A condition is going to boil down to a value of either true or false. If it's true, then obviously the code inside the if curly brackets will run. If it's false, then either nothing will happen or the code inside your else block will run. Now, for the condition, we are not limited to only the greater than symbol or operator. But before we move on to learn about other ways of comparing values, let's first analyze what's really going on here. So as you might have guessed, the greater than operator is going to compare the value to its left and the value to its right, and then return either a value of true or a value of false. Now, this whole idea of a true or false value is a new concept to us. So in previous lessons, we've learned that there are different types of values in JavaScript. So down here, just as an example, I could say let test value equal. And we've learned that one type of a value is a number, right? You don't need quotes around a number. We learned that another type of value is a string of text, right? You wrap it in quotes. We learned that another type of value is an object with curly brackets, right? So you could say species cat. We learned that another type of value is an array with square brackets separated by commas, right? Like this. So that's numbers, strings of text, objects, arrays, and now I want to introduce you to a new type of value named a Boolean. A Boolean value is either set to literally the word true and it's not wrapped in quotes. If it was wrapped in quotes, that would just be a simple string of text. But you can literally just say true or false. Okay, so the idea here is that up in our condition for the if statement, the greater than operator is either going to return true or false. And that's a special type of value. Okay, and then the if statement knows what to do with that true or false value. Okay, so now that we have a general idea of what's going on, let's take a look at other ways of comparing values aside from the greater than operator. So obviously there is also the less than operator. There is also the less than or equal to operator. As you might have guessed, there's the greater than or equal to operator. Or if you want to see if a value equals something in particular, you can say two equal signs. And now this would only return true if our strawberry count was specifically set to 9. The key here is that a single equal sign is how we can assign a value, right? We are saying this should equal this, whereas double equal sign or two equal signs in a row like this is how we check for equality. Okay, another comparison operator is if we say exclamation equal sign, and this will return true if the value is anything but the number 9. So if I come up here and set the value to 20, obviously that's not 9, so down here we see the congrats message. Also, it's important to know that we do not even need to use a comparison operator at all. So for example, our condition could literally just be the strawberry count variable. Because in this context where JavaScript is expecting a true or false value, any number larger than 0 will be interpreted as true. So right now we see that this is evaluating to true because we see the congrats message, but up on this first line of code, if we changed our variable to equal 0, we see that it evaluates to false. So within this context of everything getting interpreted as either true or false, 0 is false, any other number is true. Obviously, if we spell out true, we see the congrats message, or we could set this to false. Also, a completely empty string of text will be interpreted as a false value, but a string of text with any actual content in it is interpreted as true. Okay, at this point in the lesson, let's change gears a bit, and I want to stress the fact that this whole idea of true or false values is not limited to just an if statement. Or in other words, the if statement is not the only place where a true or false value is useful. So right now I want to show you a new example I'm going to completely erase everything we have here and start fresh. For this next example, let's imagine that we want to output something onto the web page many times, maybe 100 or 200 times. So this is totally random, but just type this out with me. If we say document.write and we say there are 2 strawberries. Okay, and then let's just copy and paste this line. Copy and paste it. And imagine that you wanted to count. So you'd say there are 2 strawberries, there are 3, there are 4, there are 5, there are 6. And imagine you wanted to count like this all the way up to 500. Well, copying and pasting would be incredibly repetitive, and it's really just sloppy, lazy code. But luckily, computers are really good at repetitive tasks. So right now I want to show you how we can make the computer do all of that hard work for us. And the key here is leveraging a true or false value. So check this out. Let's begin with 2 forward slashes to begin a comment. I will explain why we are including this comment in just a moment, but right after that, let's say while, and then a pair of parentheses, and then after that, a pair of curly brackets. Now, within the while parentheses, we include a condition, obviously that will return true or false. Now, as long as it evaluates to true, whatever lives within the curly brackets is going to happen again. And then it's going to check the true or false nature of our condition again, and then repeat the curly brackets again and again and again until finally the condition evaluates to false. It's a bit hard to understand until you actually see it in action, so let's try this out. On a new line up at the very top, let's say let strawberry count equal 2. Okay, now in the condition for our while loop, within these parentheses, let's say while strawberry count is less than 200. Then within the curly brackets for the while loop, let's say document.write, and let's say there are, and then instead of hard coding a number ourselves right here, like 3 or 4 or 5, let's end the quotes and say plus strawberry count, so pull in the variable, and then let's finish out the sentence. So there are blank strawberries. Okay, now right after this line, but still within the while loop curly brackets, let's say strawberry count should equal strawberry count plus 1. I will explain this line of code in just a minute, but for now, let's try removing the 2 forward slashes on this line of code to basically remove the comment. Okay, down in the preview area, you can see that the computer automatically counted all the way to 199. If we wanted it to actually include 200, we could change this to less than or equal to. Okay, then down in the preview, we see it counted all the way to 200. So what's going on? How is this working? Basically, a while loop is just going to keep repeating its body, its area within the curly brackets here, until the condition is no longer true. So we know that strawberry count starts out with a value of 2, and then each time the while loop runs, remember on this line of code, we are basically incrementing strawberry count by 1. So we're saying that variable should equal itself plus 1. Now a neat little trick, there is a more succinct or cleaner way of writing this same line of code. But before we improve or modify this line, I want to be sure to comment out the beginning of our while loop once again. So just 2 forward slashes here. And I'm only doing this because CodePen automatically reruns and retests your code after every keystroke. And when you're working with a while loop, you want to be careful to not try and execute an infinite loop. Because if you think about it, without this line of code that I'm highlighting right now, if we never incremented the value of strawberry count, then the while loop would just run forever because it would never have a value greater than 200. And computers don't like it when you create an infinite loop. They tend to freeze up or lock up. Anyways, once you've commented out the beginning of the while loop, we can improve this line of code by simply saying strawberry count plus plus. When we include 2 plus symbols at the end of a variable like this, it will increment or add 1 to that value. Okay, now let's test this out. Let's get rid of the comment or the 2 slashes in front of while. And we see that it works perfectly still. And just a small update, why don't we change it so that each sentence sits on its own line? So after strawberries period, I'm just going to include a BR tag. Cool, and there we see it. The computer counts all the way up to 200 for us. And computers are really good at repetitive tasks like this. You could change this to 500. And it's going to count all the way up for you. Anyways, the takeaway idea here is that there are many places in JavaScript where you can leverage a true or false value. To circle back to the idea of this lesson, the while loop is going to keep repeating itself again and again and again as long as this value is true. Or to put it into common English, it's basically saying, while this is true, do this. Now that's going to bring this lesson to a close, but before we move on to the next lesson, I do want to let you know that I am fully aware that these first 4 or 5 lessons have been a bit disjointed. And I know it can be challenging to stay engaged because we haven't yet tried to test our knowledge by building some sort of real-world application, right? The fun level has not been too high yet, but trust me, you are doing yourself a huge favor by learning this core of the language first. Once all of these different symbols and parentheses and equal signs, once this basic syntax becomes even a little bit familiar to you, you will have already won 90% of the battle of learning to be a JavaScript developer. Because JavaScript is JavaScript. It doesn't matter if we are writing it in the web browser, or if we are writing it for Node to set up a server, or we are writing it for MongoDB to work with a database. If you can speak this code, if you can speak this language itself, then learning the environmental jargon of the browser or Node or MongoDB is a piece of cake. Now again, I know the fun level in the course so far has been relatively low, and I know that so many other courses take the opposite approach. They have you start building a web application immediately, but you're really just copying what the instructor is typing because things are moving so fast and you haven't yet had a chance to get familiar with the syntax, right? The parentheses, the curly brackets, the dots, the equal signs, the quotes, so on and so forth. So long story short, I know without a doubt that this is the most boring and tedious part of the entire full stack course. But consider this first chapter the metaphorical act of eating your broccoli, right? It's not the tastiest, but it's really good for you in the long run. So for many of you, I know it feels like we're moving very slowly. Don't worry, the speed and tempo of this course is going to pick up dramatically as we move on, but in this first introductory chapter, let's just keep eating our broccoli for a few more lessons, right? We are already done with day 5 out of 10. And once we finish the 10 days of JavaScript, we will have a rock-solid foundation and a basic understanding of the language itself. And then from there, we can get on to the fun stuff and actually start building applications. Trust me, there is a method to this madness. Now, in our very next lesson, we are going to learn more about functions as we answer the question, what is a higher order function? Should be a lot of fun. Let's keep things rolling, and I will see you in the next lesson. The 10 Days of JavaScript is the first chapter for my upcoming premium course, Full Stack JavaScript from Scratch. I'm making these first 10 or 11 videos freely available on YouTube, and so for the next 10 days, I'm going to upload one new video each day. So stay tuned, or if you're watching this in the future, all the lessons are up, so feel free to binge watch. The full premium course is not available just yet, but if you subscribe to this channel, you'll be notified as soon as it's out. Or if you're watching this video in the future, it's already available. Enjoy!